A simple, everyday action, taking a pain reliever, led to a chilling crime that shocked an entire community. This is the story of Sue Snow, a vibrant and hardworking bank manager whose mysterious death unraveled a sinister plot of cyanide poisoning. What seemed like a tragic accident soon turned into a case of cold-blooded murder, leaving investigators scrambling to piece together the clues. But how did a faint, almost imperceptible smell of bitter almonds crack this case wide open? And what dark motives lay behind this calculated crime? Let's dive into the chilling details of one of the most infamous product tampering cases in U.S. history. Sue Snow was a 40-year-old bank manager from Auburn, Washington, known for her dedication to her work and her warm, caring personality. On the morning of June 11, 1986, Sue woke up with a headache, a common ailment for her. She reached for a capsule of extra-strength Excedrin, a trusted over-the-counter pain reliever, and took it with a glass of water. Moments later, Sue collapsed in her bathroom. Her 15-year-old daughter, Haley, found her unconscious and called 911. Sue was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to save her. But despite their efforts, Sue was declared brain dead and passed away shortly after. Her sudden death left her family and community in shock. How could a healthy, vibrant woman die so suddenly? The answer would soon send ripples of fear across the nation. During Sue's autopsy, a forensic assistant noticed something unusual, a faint but distinct smell of bitter almonds emanating from her body. For those familiar with forensic science, this was a telltale sign of cyanide poisoning. Cyanide, a deadly chemical, interferes with the body's ability to use oxygen, leading to rapid organ failure and death. One of its most distinctive characteristics is the bitter almond odor it leaves behind, though not everyone can detect it due to genetic differences in smell perception. The forensic team immediately knew they were dealing with something far more sinister than a natural death. They collected samples of Sue's blood, stomach contents, and the Excedrin capsules she had taken. Toxicology tests confirmed the presence of lethal levels of potassium cyanide in her bloodstream, enough to kill an adult within minutes. With the confirmation of cyanide poisoning, investigators scrambled to determine how the poison had ended up in Sue Snow's Excedrin capsules. The case was eerily reminiscent of the 1982 Tylenol murders, where tampered pain relievers had been laced with cyanide, causing widespread panic and leading to the introduction of tamper-proof packaging. At first, investigators considered several possibilities. Could this be another random act of product tampering, like the Tylenol case? Was Sue specifically targeted, or was this a broader attempt to harm unsuspecting consumers? Could someone close to Sue have had a motive to kill her? Their attention quickly shifted when they interviewed Sue's husband, Paul Webking. Paul had been the one to first suggest that the Excedrin capsules might have been poisoned. While this could have been an innocent observation, his behavior raised red flags. He seemed unusually eager to link the pills to Sue's death, which struck investigators as suspicious. But what made Paul's actions even more unsettling was a chilling detail. Paul had also taken medicine from the same bottle of Excedrin. He claimed he had taken a capsule shortly before Sue, but unlike her, he had suffered no ill effects. This inconsistency puzzled investigators. If the bottle had been tampered with, why had Paul survived while Sue died? While Paul remained on the list of potential suspects, investigators had no direct evidence linking him to the poisoning. But then, a shocking discovery changed everything. When forensic experts examined the Excedrin bottle, they found that not all the capsules were laced with cyanide. Only a select few had been tampered with, suggesting that the poisoner had carefully chosen which capsules to target. This raised a disturbing possibility. What if the killer had intentionally spared Paul while ensuring Sue ingested a lethal dose? The investigation took a darker turn as detectives began to piece together the timeline of events. Had Paul known which capsules were safe to take? Or was his survival merely a stroke of luck? As the case unfolded, one thing became clear. This was no random act of product tampering. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure Sue Snow's death, and the killer was likely closer to her than anyone realized. Initially, detectives explored multiple angles. Could Sue have been targeted personally, or was this a random act of product tampering? The latter possibility sent chills down their spines as it echoed the infamous 1982 Tylenol cyanide murders that had claimed 7 lives in Chicago. Sue's twin sister, Stella Nichol, provided a crucial clue. She revealed that Sue had been using capsule-form medication, a habit she normally avoided due to concerns about the Tylenol tampering case. This raised suspicions that the Excedrin capsules might have been tampered with. When investigators analyzed the Excedrin bottle Sue had used, they made a horrifying discovery. 9 of the capsules were laced with cyanide. This wasn't just a random act. It was a deliberate attempt to kill. As investigators worked to unravel the mystery of Sue Snow's poisoning, an unexpected development shifted the case into even darker territory. A woman named Stella Nichol came forward with a startling claim. Her husband, Bruce Nichol, had died under eerily similar circumstances just weeks before Sue. Stella Nichol was adamant that her husband's death was no accident. Bruce, a 45-year-old construction worker, had been in good health aside from minor respiratory issues. On June 5, 1986, he came home from work complaining of a headache. Like many people, he reached for a common pain reliever, extra-strength Excedrin. Shortly after swallowing the capsules, Bruce collapsed suddenly, gasping for air. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save him. At the time, Bruce's death had not raised any alarms. The initial medical examination listed emphysema as the likely cause, given his history of smoking. With no obvious signs of foul play, the case was closed until Sue Snow's mysterious poisoning weeks later. When news broke about Sue's cyanide poisoning, Stella immediately contacted authorities. She pointed out disturbing similarities between Bruce's sudden collapse and Sue's fatal reaction to Excedrin. She insisted that her husband's death be re-examined, convinced that he too had been poisoned. Stella's persistence prompted investigators to order toxicology tests on Bruce's preserved tissue samples. The results were staggering. Bruce's blood contained lethal levels of cyanide, the same deadly chemical found in Sue Snow's system. This revelation confirmed that Bruce's death had been wrongly classified as natural causes. Instead, it was now clear that 2 separate victims had died from cyanide-laced Excedrin capsules. With the confirmation of cyanide poisoning, investigators scrambled to determine how the poison had ended up in Sue Snow's Excedrin capsules. The case was eerily reminiscent of the 1982 Tylenol murders, a series of deaths that had shaken the nation just 4 years earlier. In that case, 7 people in the Chicago area had died after consuming Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide. The killer had never been caught, and the incident had led to widespread panic, nationwide product recalls, and the introduction of tamper-proof packaging. Authorities immediately took action. Excedrin products were pulled from store shelves, fearing a widespread tampering incident. The FBI took over the case, treating it as a possible product tampering crime. A nationwide warning was issued, urging consumers not to take Excedrin until further notice. What had initially seemed like an isolated poisoning had now escalated into a full-blown public health crisis. The possibility of a random killer placing poisoned pain relievers on store shelves sent shockwaves through the country, reminiscent of the 1982 Tylenol cyanide murders. But as investigators dug deeper, they would soon uncover that this was not a random crime. Someone had carefully planned these poisonings. A significant breakthrough came when forensic experts detected traces of an unusual compound inside the poisoned capsules. Algae destroyer, a chemical commonly used in aquariums to control the growth of unwanted algae. At first, this discovery puzzled investigators. While cyanide was a rare and deadly poison, algae destroyer was not something typically associated with criminal activity. However, its presence suggested that the person who tampered with the Excedrin capsules had likely handled both substances in close proximity. Unlike cyanide, which could be sourced from multiple places, algae destroyer was not commonly found in households unless someone owned an aquarium. Investigators began looking into individuals who had access to both cyanide and algae destroyer, cross-referencing known victims and their associates. Their search quickly led them to Stella Nichol, the wife of Bruce Nichol, one of the poisoning victims. Stella not only owned an aquarium, but had also purchased algae destroyer in the past. This discovery provided the first forensic link between the crime and a suspect, though it was not yet enough to prove her guilt. As they dug deeper into Stella's life, a disturbing picture began to emerge. She had been facing serious financial difficulties and was struggling with debt. She had taken out multiple life insurance policies on Bruce, totaling $175,000, with one policy including a double indemnity clause. This meant she would receive twice the payout if Bruce's death was ruled an accident rather than natural causes. Investigators also found it suspicious that Stella had insisted on reopening Bruce's autopsy after Sue Snow's case became public. They began to suspect that her true motive was to ensure Bruce's death was identified as cyanide poisoning so she could collect the full insurance payout. Detectives developed a chilling theory. Stella had intentionally poisoned her husband with cyanide-laced Excedrin capsules, but to avoid suspicion, she needed his death to appear as part of a larger product tampering case rather than an isolated murder. To accomplish this, she poisoned additional Excedrin bottles and placed them in stores, hoping that other people would die. When Sue Snow became an unintended victim, it created the illusion of a widespread Excedrin poisoning, diverting investigators from the real motive behind Bruce's death. With forensic evidence pointing directly to Stella, investigators began gathering more proof. A search of her home revealed records of her past purchases of cyanide and algae destroyer. Library records showed that she had checked out books on poisons, further implicating her in the crime. The most damning evidence came from her own daughter, who disclosed that Stella had previously spoken about poisoning Bruce and had researched different methods of killing. Every piece of evidence led to the same conclusion. Stella Nichol was the mastermind behind the cyanide poisonings. The case was no longer about identifying the perpetrator, but about proving her guilt beyond any doubt. Detectives were now ready to bring Stella to justice. With mounting evidence against Stella Nichol, investigators were ready to make their move. On December 9, 1987, after a thorough investigation, authorities arrested Stella at her home in Auburn, Washington. She was charged with 2 counts of product tampering resulting in death, one for her husband, Bruce Nichol, and the other for Sue Snow, the innocent victim who had unknowingly consumed the poisoned Excedrin capsules. During the trial, prosecutors laid out their case in devastating detail. They presented forensic evidence linking the cyanide-laced capsules to Stella, including the traces of algae destroyer found in the pills. They highlighted her financial struggles and the substantial life insurance payout she stood to gain from Bruce's death. The most incriminating testimony came from Stella's daughter, Cindy Hamilton, who revealed that her mother had spoken about poisoning Bruce long before his death and had researched different methods to do so. Cindy also testified that Stella had a deep fascination with true crime stories, particularly those involving poisoning, which further painted her as a premeditated murderer. Stella's defense team argued that Cindy's testimony was unreliable, suggesting she had been pressured by investigators. They also claimed that Stella had no direct link to the Excedrin bottles found in stores. However, the overwhelming forensic evidence, financial motive, and Stella's suspicious actions proved too compelling for the jury to ignore. Stella Nichols' trial captivated the nation. In 1988, she was found guilty of 5 counts of product tampering and 2 counts of murder. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison, becoming the first person convicted under U.S. product tampering laws. Stella maintained her innocence throughout the trial and in the years following her conviction, but all appeals were denied. Her actions not only claimed 2 innocent lives, but also sparked fear across the country, leading to stricter regulations on over-the-counter medications. The case served as a chilling reminder of how greed and desperation could drive someone to commit unspeakable crimes, leaving behind a trail of tragedy and irreversible loss. This case stands as a chilling reminder of how greed can drive a person to commit unthinkable acts. A faint, bitter almond smell cracked the case wide open, exposing a calculated crime that claimed 2 innocent lives. Thanks to meticulous forensic work and investigative persistence, justice was served. But the story of Sue Snow and Bruce Nichol remains a haunting example of the lengths some will go to for personal gain and the importance of vigilance in protecting public safety. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant. This is Crime Tales Across Times, signing off.